Good afternoon, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and thank you, Manish, and everyone from Directions for inviting me to be here to coordinate this session. May I invite our distinguished panelists today for this session, Major General Padi. We couldn't have had a better panel today, all very experienced gentlemen in our area of work. Please make yourself comfortable. Yeah, there. Okay. Dr. Vishnu Chandra. He's been with NIC for many years and played a very significant role in the use of geographic information technologies, particularly within the government. And Mr. Chandrapal from Air Survey. Please. Maybe you could sit on the other side. And Mr. D.N. Pathak from Survey of India. Of course, we can't think of mapping in India without associating very closely maps with Survey of India. Mr. Sajid Malik, I guess will join us shortly. Mr. Simarpreet Singh, who has been, welcome, come sit. He's from Genesis International and has just joined us here. Mr. Singh, from Compare Infobase. We all know about Maps of India and Maps of the World, and he's been around in this business of offering easy create this data, and all the many different technologies that are available, different channels that are available for us to gather this data may need to be required to ensure that these projects move ahead quickly. So, I think I will, and one other point that we cannot wish away is our industry is fairly well regulated. And sometimes we are a fairly well regulated industry, and for this reason, a lot of the queries that come to the mind of people who operate in this environment are relating to regulations and how may we follow these regulations or ask for changes within these regulations in line with changing technologies. I'm going to request General Padi, who's been with the survey agencies of the government for very, very long and been part of this business for very long, to speak a few words first. You have that mic.
Okay. First, good afternoon to my fellow panelists, and thank you, madam, for giving me the opportunity to speak first. Good afternoon to the distinguished audience here. Now, firstly, when you look at the surveying and mapping technology itself, there are so many changes has taken place in the last 2-3 decades. Earlier, the concept, the approach were totally different than what we see today. In fact, about 3 decades back, hardly 1 or 2 survey companies were existing in the country. Now I see a lot of companies have been coming forward. So many types of instruments have come up, which is helping in doing the survey and mapping work with great speed. It's a great change. Then the digital revolution, which has fired the aspiration of the user community. Now more and more users have joined the geospatial user group, and particularly applications of GIS, remote sensing, have made our life much simpler. And good products like we can see these applications even in our day-to-day life, which was earlier probably not there. Now, the changes are taking place, and changes are everywhere, which is a very natural phenomena. But we must also derive some benefit from the new technology, new changes which is happening. It must generate employment. It must improve our national economy. It must help our day-to-day life better. Now, the first thing is how to generate employment. As I said, at one point of time, there were only one or two companies. Now, more companies have come up. So, it has got a potential. That is why it is growing. But we need to accelerate the growth of this industry by giving them more work. As it is, the new government has given a slogan, minimum government and maximum governance. So allow the industry to grow on their own with very positive, helpful policies. Government role should be only hand-holding, not interfering or putting restrictions, which was earlier there. Very restrictive policies were there, and it was not creating a favorable environment for growth. The second one is economy. Now, so far, most of our products, instruments, whatever we are seeing, they are not manufactured in India. The software available in this area are not developed in India, in spite of India having a strong IT industry. It is all because that the first one, that means the industry has really not grown to that scope what we have got existing. Rather, a time has come, India should produce these equipments and sell it abroad. Equipments, solutions, applications, so everything together. That means I, as an individual citizen, I always feel that now a time has come when we have got 120 billion population, 100 entrepreneurs we should produce. And this industry, this particular technology has got that potential. The third one is the user aspirations. Earlier, we used to create something and thinking that whatever I have created, the user will come and he will take it happily. But these days, user demands. He wants in a particular format or particular way or particular solutions, which is not available, as we call the commercially available COTS product. It is not there. Now, because most of the products are generated by the government, there are few solutions which is created by the private entrepreneurs or the industry for only a specific user segment. So we need to change that concept. We need to have a whole lot of industry with a whole lot of solutions where a lot of customers, user groups should come, they should buy. To do all these things, I think a time has also come to relook into the policies. And I feel very encouraged when the Prime Minister has said and given a direction to all the government departments and ministries, you identify your 10 policies which require review, which require relook. And I think this is the most right time and opportunity. We should all think which are the policies which is not helping, the 3 points which I listed earlier, and come out with some good recommendation to the government so that the policies can be improved.
Thank you. I think this was a good opening to put us into a mind frame where we understand what the issues are and what we need to do. Mr. Partner, would you be interested in telling us how we need to follow this through?
Very good afternoon to all of you and fellow panelists. As Padi sir has already outlined the issues which are there in this sector, right from the revolution which has taken place in surveying and mapping industry, transformation from conventional technology to the present day digital technology. And the main point which I feel is the capacity building is not at par with the requirements and the change of technologies. So even we see in the private industry also, the people are working with minimal training, and the full capacity or potential of the instruments, equipments available with them are not being utilized. And as in the digital age, we are talking about almost all the large scale projects which are being implemented. We are using digital photogrammetric technology, LiDAR, and now we are talking about UAVs and all. So all these require very trained professionals who can, operate these and process the data. Even if you see in the data processing also, we have got that in the digital age that there are a lot of IT savvy people, and all the people are trained in working on computers and all. So they are good at it and they can process the data. But if you see in the mapping projects, the main foundation is the groundwork which is required. The basic foundation is the groundwork. We need to have proper groundwork, ground control points, planimetric as well as vertical in the field. So if industry is coming into it and they want to produce the good quality data and all, so they need to train people who can carry out the groundwork as per the specification of whatever Survey of India has said, or international standards on that. So that is very important in my view.
I think you will be encouraged by knowing that our conversations with various companies shows that industry is very keen to do this. Industry, in fact, is looking forward to the opportunity for developing capacity in these areas, and has on several occasions have come up with the idea of not just creating highly qualified engineers for survey, but also at a lower level, enumerators, auditors, surveyors who can actually go out into the field and work, and technologists who need to look at the vast volumes of data that come out from aerial equipment or carried by the satellites. So, yes, you speak about a need, and I'm getting back to telling you that people sitting here actually want to support you in this. So, what about the companies who have actually used satellite images, and government departments who have actually used existing data that is available with you? Dr. Chandra, would you like to speak of the different services that you offer to government?
Thank you, fellow panelist and madam. See, time has changed, technology has changed, requirement, demand, aspirations has changed. Earlier we used to see survey and mapping or IT in a different compartment. Now we are talking about single end-to-end system, a single ecosystem. So this was the demand of time. So the kind of technologies and users' aspirations which are emerging now, it is talking about total end-to-end enterprise system. And taking that into mind, one has to look what kind of training, capacity building is required in the process. So in context of whatever the governance, e-governance services, NIC, I belong to NIC, which we are building e-governance platforms for various ministries, departments, starting from central, state, district, and now we are moving to block and further. So we are trying to create some sort of a technology platform, including GIS platforms and services where people can collaborate. It means we are trying to create an ecosystem where application services are driven by user, by e-governance projects. Like whether it is a mining tenement system, whether it is a school-related schemes, programs of the government, whether it is a agriculture credits and things like that, agriculture market, or demand supply chain related to fertilizer management. So all these live applications where we are trying to integrate geospatial technologies. And since now technology is also allowing me to capture data through crowdsourcing or controlled crowdsourcing, those processes. So This is what largely we are trying to do. But in context of the vision of this seminar, I would like to say survey and mapping is essential prerequisite for accurate data and for meaningful GIS and location-based services. So there is no denial of that point. And survey, there are many survey organizations in this country like Survey of India, Forest Survey of India. What I see, the back-end infrastructure which can support online services, there is a need to strengthen that. See, when I talk about back-end infrastructure means all those human resources, all those stakeholders who are involved from survey process, means there are field parties which goes, there are field parties which collect samples, samples may go to lab, get interpreted. So entire the work process where all these technologies which today you are talking about, UAV, mobile-based systems, all those service technologies are going to be deployed and used, and where capacities has to be created. So time has come, create an enterprise solution, automating entire survey process. And that feed your national GIS and whatever the system. So until unless, when I'm talking about end-to-end process, it will include Geo-ICT enablement of ERP processes like vehicle management, human resource management, lab management, all those ERP functions which get linked to actual service process. So those things has to get automated. So if you plan end-to-end process and link to your server infrastructure where, say, think about out-of-the-box solutions, say, mobile apps for topographic mapping, mobile apps for forest mapping, mobile app for geological mapping. Now, in that process, you build the capacities so that you have entire supply chain, I will call it, of survey and mapping get integrated with service delivery. So this is what, like, even crowdsourcing should also be used as a tool for data capture and with backend infrastructure for QA/QC. So these are the new concepts. So enabling, so today, very small thing, which I don't find, there is no survey and mapping portal in the country which you can document all standard operating procedures of survey, or if you want to say what kind of survey and mapping procedure is required by, say, auditor, as you are saying, required by, say, surveyor. Today, in area like mining, there is no mechanism to accurately demarcate boundaries of mining leases. We talk about mining lease violation. So who will demarcate those mining lease boundaries accurately? GSI does not do that. State government does not have infrastructure and capacity for that. Miner will do some survey, but who will authenticate and vet that? So these are the problems which there is no single source of information on survey and mapping which can say SOP for, say, geological mapping, SOP for topographic mapping. All those things at one place. How a road engineer should use topographic data and value add it. How NHAI should value add topographic data for his requirement, for their requirement. So there are a lot of data which is collected by, say, NHAI, which should be value added on topographic map. So these are the things, these are the issues which one has to look into. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandra. That sort of gives an idea of the vast amount of work needed to be done yet by us to move on. Now, an important point that he's brought up, and which I'd like us to think about a little, are the many different channels by which we can introduce mapping data. It's not necessarily, I don't want to go back to the textbook description of terrestrial survey and aerial survey, or because we now have sources like crowdsourcing, which seems to be acceptable now. And so I would like to speak to three gentlemen here who directly or indirectly have experience in using non-terrestrial systems. Anirudh, would you like to speak a little bit about how you used LIDAR and where you stand? Louder.
So as an end user, you know, the complete life cycle, the government user or a private user, nobody is worried about how you capture the data. Our fraternity is very interested in how we do survey, how we do mapping. But from the end user's perspective, they want a data. They want a map, something what we see it in the social media, like a check-in in the Facebook. We see a map and it is getting checked in. Now the means to do that differs from what is the application and what is the purpose. Based on that, we determine what should be the scale and what should be the accuracy. Now earlier, we used to do this survey and we used to get the paper map. And with the printed map, we used to be very excited about the whole phenomenon. Today, the same thing can be done very rapidly. India is a huge market. There is a place for everybody. And all the technologies do have a role to play. The challenge which I see here, primarily from the technological perspective, is a convergence of the technologies. We do have a lot of leader manufacturers. I talked to many of them. Individually, most of them are actually satisfying the complete needs. But as a system integrator, when I put across the data, the end user objective, again, we need to fulfill that, okay, we get the data, we post-process it, we finally put it in the server, we put RDBMS, we put it through a web-based system where clients can access in the browser end, they can also see it in the mobile. So this complete cycle, once I through there are many impediments. And interoperability do play a big role in it. And let me put it across this part also. I'm a part of the task force in the Government of India, Bureau of Indian Standards, where there is a technical committee, TC211, where this part has been largely taken upon. Recently, we also formed a subgroup on LIDAR technology standards. As a country, we should have a common minimal standards which everybody should adhere, irrespective of whether it's the government, whether it's from the industry. So the way I see it that we need to adopt new technologies. They are very fast. There are a few projects which has been done very successfully. And from CAD to BIM, there are a lot of other technologies which are getting integrated. But the success lies in the standardization, which is again coming from the government part. And how do you adhere to it, that is up to us to decide.
Sajid, would you like to speak about, I must bring to the notice of everyone that Wonobo has been something that people have spoken about, and we have the person behind it right here, so we would like to speak to him.
Yep.
Speak him.
Thank you. I guess Wonobo for us, I mean, we've been in the mapping space for a while now. And having worked internationally, we wanted to do something for our own country. And I think I want to echo Pati Saab's comment which he made in his address, that a day needs to come where we also within India, parlay the skills that we have domestically and grow the industry. A lot of companies in India are doing amazing work in other countries, and a time has come where we have begun doing this for our own backyards and for our own country. So it was an expression of that, and I think with a larger need that if content is now accessible in a simple way, it will kind of drive more and more adoption within the user community in India. So we've been seeing some amazing response from what we've achieved, and I think I'll take a leaf out of what Anirudh just mentioned, that the mobile is indeed becoming a delivery mechanism for a lot of people to fulfill what they want to do. So be it an enterprise user or be it a consumer who wants to go from place A to place B. A lot of the recent programs by government, like the APDRP program, the NLRMP, is helping build capacity within the, we all went through the pangs of trying to get resources. I know at one point of time we employed nearly more than 1,000 people for the APDRP program in UP, and we went through our own challenges in implementing that. And these are the kind of growing pains of our industry when we are suddenly faced with doing these large-scale projects which were hitherto not there in this country, that this may probably be the push that is needed to get the survey industry organized. And I'm hoping that we are seeing now the emergence of a organized survey industry within India.
Yeah. Thank you. You didn't speak about Wonovo at all, though, mind you. That's something that's excited a lot of people.
I can do that now if you so wish.
Just, yes, maybe a minute.
Right. So what we have done is we have created content for the top 54 cities of India. This is a kind of immersive view of every of the entire city. And the top 54 cities really cover 70% of the India's urban economy. We have geotagged around 8 million points of interest. We have captured every structure in these top 54 cities. So in one sense, we like to call this project the Unique Building ID project of India. So we have the UID, and I think what we are attempting to do is to build a probably the largest real estate also database of India. We have tagged 4.5 million businesses. These 4.5 million businesses are, a bulk of them are people who never had an online presence. So we are really capturing the long tail of small businesses who are going online. So we have created a unique online presence for each of them. We are seeing some amazing adoption by some of these smaller merchants. We are also seeing, I mean, we as a society never grew with maps around us. You know, we didn't have maps at home. We don't use, even PND devices are not very, you know, kind of common in India today. And in one sense, I think we wanted to create an environment where people are able to engage with the cities virtually as they do so physically. So it takes away a lot of the map orientation which is perhaps needed by some people. So I think as the next 150, 200 million people join the internet, and there's this whole expectation that the revolution that we saw in voice, we will see that in data and in internet access in the coming years. We need to build applications for the next 150, 200 million who will be adopting the internet in the next 3-4 years. And we see maps as a very important utility for these people. And we wanted to create an environment where someone who is coming in to a big city, and we saw so many use cases where people coming, migrant people who are coming, young students coming into a large city, they want to know where is it that this college is, where can I stay, where is possibly a paying guest accommodation. So these are the kind of basic needs that map normally fulfills, which we are trying to do it in a unique and an interesting manner.
Here, I was listening very carefully because clearly a lot of companies and even the government are trying to create applications making use of the kind of communications infrastructure and the mobile smartphones that are now ubiquitous everywhere. And I think the point here is there are several companies who have come up with similar platforms. But what I would have liked to have heard a little bit about, but we'll move on maybe for later, is how was it that you were able to use 3D images, whereas other companies, to my mind, have not been that successful to use 3D images on the internet. So that's one point. The other point, the next point as it moves on, so clearly there is a jump at a point where you need to understand how to be able to do it successfully. Okay, so I would like to ask Mr. Chandrapal, how can we in India, knowing that aerial surveys are fairly restricted and there are very few companies who are willing to invest in this fairly large sums of money into this business, if they are not certain that they can fly over the country. So it's a situation that needs to be clarified, basically more than anything else. So you would be the right person to talk about it. Please, take a...
regard to the policy on aerial survey. See, the policy is made by the governments. We are the implementing of agencies only. So, if anybody other than the prescribed agencies take aerial survey for any pocket, it has to be cleared by the government. So, I think if government consider that it is appropriate or some pockets can be done by private agencies, yeah, can be used by debarring some areas or some special VA, VPs, details, it can be allowed. Seeing by not compromising from national securities. If we can save the national securities, keeping view the other points and interest of the nation, there is no harm to allow the private agencies or some pockets to fly here.
Allow me, I will add something on this particular aspect of aerial photography. The first policy was introduced by MOD in 1969. And on 1st May 2006, the policy got amended when I was doing DTG military survey at that point of time. Now, the policy says anybody doing aerial photography has to come to DGCA, 6 applications. Then the 6 applications are sent to MOD. Then there are security agencies are there, Army, Navy, Air Force, IB. And you have to give your area where you want to do the aerial photography, the purpose of aerial photography, the kind of equipments which you want to bring in. And then it has to be vetted by all the security agencies, and the permission is conveyed by MOD through DGCA to the indentor. The positive side of this policy is that the foreigners are also allowed, foreign aircrafts can come, foreign equipments can come. So it was in 2006 a very positive step by the government to improve or to allow people to do aerial photography within the country, because earlier only NRSC was allowed. Now, I want to highlight one more point. A small country like New Zealand, where we have got hundreds of aerial photography companies existing. But in India, still, because not enough work is coming, and also maybe there are certain areas in the policy which is not very friendly to the industry, I find not a single aerial photography company existing in the country. Some geospatial companies, they are hiring aircrafts from some source, hiring equipment from some source, because the jobs are coming in tits and bits, not as a regular inflow. Even if I've got an aerial photography company here, probably I don't have job for the whole year. Whereas we all know the most suitable input for mapping is an aerial photograph. The first choice for a map maker is aerial photograph. I've been suggesting for the whole country, you do aerial photography every year and do the change detection marking and all, lot of useful applications and utility can be developed. And this aerial photographs will be used very much for your cadastral mapping, for urban mapping, for your disaster related activities, so many and so forth. It has got a lot of other applications. So it has got a lot of potential. The policies are there, it requires a little bit of modification. That's all.
I'm sure, like me, many of you are very happy to hear that. Minor modifications will bring us what we all want. Okay. And finally, we have Mr. Singh here, who will talk about his experience making maps of India. And I will request you, Mr. Singh, to focus a little bit on the crowdsourcing that you're using.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to panel. Thank you, ma'am. You see, I would begin with a very simple question to everyone here. What do we think information is? Is information a privilege which is with the government, or is information a duty which the government has to its citizens? Can we have an answer? Does anybody think that information is a privilege which is with the government, and the government should keep that privilege close to its chest and not go out to people about it?
Hands up.
And how many people think that it is a duty with the government to let the information flow like a river's flow, even if they flow polluted, but they flow at least? So we have few people who feel that information should flow freely. Now this is the challenge. When we started with Maps of India in 1998, we basically had a stone wall. You make a map, but if you want to call your map a map, you would be put behind bars. You cannot put a map of India on the internet and call it a map. So, but we have mapsofindia.com, which is visited by 500,000 people every day. What did we do? We go ahead, we make our maps, we worked with many of you here, we make our maps, we make them to scale, and after doing everything, we kill our maps. We go ahead and say that our maps are not maps, these are images, these are not to scale. We pull ourselves out of the government window altogether. We just kill the product. But at the end of the day, we have been able to go ahead and legit, in a very legit manner, bypass the system and go on to the next level. Now this gets us to one generation. We started in 1998. From 1998 till now, we have been moving as the technology has been moving to apps and everything. Now what I was talking to ma'am a couple of half an hour back or 45 minutes back was, what is the next stage where we are moving to? And we are moving to the next stage. It is the crowdsourcing part. Now, information is a privilege with the government, which we don't know when the policy changes would happen, how things would happen, when and at all it will happen or not. But today, handheld devices have brought information into hands of almost every second or third Indian who is on the street. Almost everybody has information with him. GPS access is as easy as probably accessing water in remote areas of India is more difficult than accessing GPSs today. So with those things in mind, what we are looking at it is, and we are rolling out another project, it is called as mapmyworld.com, which is purely based on crowdsourcing. What we feel is that if people share with us what are the places they go to, what are the places they like, what is the last mile they really care about, what is that pothole on a road which bothers them, and literally the last 150, 10, 5 meters of information, if they can come and bring it to us, it will be a great help. In this regard, we started a dead project. I call it a dead project a few years back. It is called as badroadsofindia.com. You can actually type it badroadsofindia.com. You will go to this site, which simply says, please go ahead and report a bad road if you have seen. We didn't publicize it. We didn't do anything about it. You'll be surprised. 36,000 bad road patches have been reported on that site. In the last few years, it has been on. That is the power of crowdsourcing, and that's exactly what we are doing. More later, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, that's very inspiring. Yes, please.
Most of the panelists here and crowdsourcing these days is, it is being talked about a lot. So I have a point whether my view is that crowdsourcing data can be used by crowd for their own application. Whether government policies and decision support system can be based on the crowdsourced data or not.
Yes, please.
I believe that crowdsourcing is like going ahead and bringing first level of information on the table. Validating it is very important. The other day, we were doing a discussion within our office, and it came up that what would really make GIS happen in a big way in India? That was that if we use our postal service, instead of converting India Post into a banking system, if we go ahead and give a GPS handheld device to our guys, our postman who's there, suddenly the whole India is perfectly fine. So the crowdsourcing information is definitely raw, but there are means and ways to validate it, bring a filtered layer to it, and then pass it on through. That's what is my view about it.
Yeah, please.
See, this whole crowdsourcing, I can divide this crowdsourcing process in two ways. One is what you are doing from public. Other, there is a lot of scope for crowdsourcing within government. Through what you call secured crowdsourcing, you can call it. See, this what we have done in, say, for capturing telecom asset with BSNL, Power Grid, Railtel. Means, say, BSNL corporate office was not knowing which asset, which fiber is lying where in the country. We have given a service on our platform. BSNL fiber are going along the road. So road as a layer, as a service have been given to their 334 offices. You draw your fiber along the road along with your exchange location, your tower locations and BTS locations. They did it. So today we have countrywide, at least in 50,000 scale, a workable map of telecom asset, which they are now using through as a pre-field map for next level of asset capturing for this NOFN project, optical fiber project. Now, from zero information, you have come a statistics. There is around 6 lakh route kilometer of fiber in the country. And these are the signatures of the route. I will call it signatures of the route available. Now, further accuracy, which fiber is going along left side of the road or right side of the road, how far from central line, all those accuracy aspects. Now, when they're going to bring their as-built drawings and all those things will be captured and brought it. So, I say in government, there is a lot of scope of controlled, secure crowdsourcing to capture at least government infrastructures and make it available as a service. Other is, even in case of public crowdsourcing, there are certain decision making which does not require very accurate data. For example, there is a site I mentioned to her called powercuts.in, which only geotag SMSs and Twitter messages with respect to location. Okay. From in Lucknow, Vikas Nagar, there is a power cut from this time to this time, unregulated power cut. So all those SMSs and Twitter's messages are geotagged with respect to the location, and any decision maker knows immediately on the map with the reports. So these are the places where are problems related to power. Now, this does not require any very high accuracy. So there are applications which can be immediately rolled out using crowdsource mechanism. There are ways in a secured government environment with limited set of people, you want to get the data, and then you have a QA/QC infrastructure at the back end to further verify it. So this is the way you can make best benefit of the crowdsourcing.
So finally, as we hear from the panelists, is really the many different ways you can get that end product, which is information about places. May not be with the same level of precision from every source, but every source has its role to play. So we didn't have any hands up, anyone standing up and asking a question directly.